Troy, thank you so much for giving us your time in this interview series that we're doing, in November. And, like I was explaining to you earlier, a large part of this demographic who's watching these interviews and who's going to be watching yours are typically, self-proclaimed people pleasers. These are people who typically hide resentment behind their smiles. They feel like they don't have a choice in their life to put their needs and their desires first, and they don't feel seen and heard. And of course, there's a lot of wounds here, and that's why I'm really excited to have you on here, Troy. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself, what you do, and what motivates you to do the work that you do?
So I am a licensed clinical social worker. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do in my life. And then I sat in a social work 101 class when I was about 21 years old, and it just resonated with me. And that kind of has been my life path as I've just kind of stumbled along the path and then found the next thing and the next thing. One of those parts of that journey was as part of my internship for my master's degree. I was sitting in a drug and alcohol rehab facility in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where I was going to be working with individuals who were struggling with addiction. And to be honest, I was terrified for a lot of reasons. I had never done drugs or alcohol. I was 24 years old. I'd never worked with adults. Like, I literally was shaking in my boots as I'm sitting there. And then I began to hear their stories, and they began to share their experiences with rejection and abandonment and neglect and abuse, and how that led them to find the ways of numbing that they were using. And the more that they shared their stories, the more I realized they were telling my story. And that may be part of the reason why I became a social worker, is because I also had those wounds and I was trying to find a way to heal them as well. And that sent me on a journey of exploration. I've read thousands of books, tons of webinars and lectures and all kinds of things, trying to understand for myself, what does that healing process look like, and how do we step into our best selves? Mm-hmm. And so that's really what my passion is how do we embrace our truth about ourselves and live in that truth and in a peaceful, loving place.
Yeah. You said something, you mentioned a lot of words earlier, things like betrayal and abandonment. And I think a lot of this audience fears this thing called abandonment. And I have that come into my office here as well. And what I try to explain to them is like, you're a grown adult, you can't be abandoned. However, it feels like we are being abandoned, right? Can you talk a little bit more about like where this can originate from?
Yeah, so those are some of what I call attachment wounds. So as humans, we're wired for connection, neurologically, biologically, sexually, physically, spiritually. We are wired to be connected to each other. And quite literally, when we are in the womb of our mother, we are literally connected to her. So we are wired to be connected to each other. And you can, like everybody's experience over the last 2 years with the epidemic and how much disconnection has happened, the amount of distress and depression and anxiety that people have been feeling. And that's because we're not getting the kind of connection we need. So if something happens along the way that damages or severs or breaks one of those connections that we have, those become what I call attachment wounds. And for many of us, they happen when we are children and we don't have the cognitive ability to really understand why they're happening, but they're incredibly painful. And then what we've learned through the research around trauma is that these wounds actually get stuck in our bodies at a cellular level, like deep down in our DNA. And so even when we're grown-ups, if something smells like abandonment or smells like, the look on that person's face that they're pulling away, it rubs up against that wound, just like as if you had a sunburn. It smacks against that, and there is this visceral physical reaction that happens inside of our body, even though cognitively we can say, hey, that's not actually what's happening, but our DNA has picked up on that, and it's our nervous system is activated because of that wound and how deep it's been. And so if we can identify the wounds and try to heal it, then we can maybe change that reaction, that impulsive reaction that happens when it gets hit. But that's what's going on when people are feeling that way, is because the wound is being hit and it hurts and they don't know what to do about it. And so they're reacting in a very panicky, anxious way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one thing I like to point out as a hypnotist is we are not our reactions, right? We are not our emotions. We are not our behaviors. We're simply experiencing, and we're doing things, but we are experiencing all these things, and we end up, attaching our identity to our behaviors and our emotions, right? And making them mean that. Can you talk a little bit about how, this and it happens so unconsciously, right?
Right. Well, it starts when we're kids. So, if someone's bullied, that's a rejection wound, or if someone's experiencing physical or sexual abuse, that's the abuse wound. But as kids, we don't have the cognitive development yet to understand that, hey, mom's got some serious problems and she needs to go get some therapy. And while she figures that out, I'm going to go hang out over at my friend's house because they have a healthy family over there. And mom, when you figure that out, well, I'll come back. Like, we don't have the ability to do that. So as kids, in our egocentrism, the only conclusion that we can come up with is, well, it must be me. There must be something wrong with me. I'm bad. I'm faulty. And then that kind of becomes a habitual way of how we then interpret painful experiences. And so it's almost an automatic. The wound gets hit and it activates these core beliefs, as I call them, inside that, well, there's something wrong with me, or I can't trust anybody, or there's nothing that I can do. There's genres of the core beliefs that show up that are also part of that experience. And if we can help the person rewire, and that's what you do a lot with hypnosis, is you're changing those internal messages. If we can change that so that even if somebody hits the wound, instead of me thinking, well, I'm not enough, there's something wrong with me, it's like, I am enough. The wound hurts, but I'm enough, I matter, and I can work through this, and that kind of stuff. That's what we're hoping for. But, we want to be able to help wire that differently, give them skills to do that differently, and then they will find the peace that they're looking for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, what I'm hearing is that we get to do work on ourselves so that we don't have to internalize this, and it doesn't have to be a problem for us anymore. And this also implies that we aren't perfect.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we're all wounded, yes. But wounds can heal, right? Wounds can heal. And the other part of that is, in our woundedness, it can help us become more compassionate for ourselves, which is, I think, hardest to do. Compassionate for ourselves and our own wounds, but also compassion for the wounds of other people who are also hurting.
Yeah. I think this realization is skipped over for so many people, and we make it like we're defective. There's something wrong with us, and everybody out there is good to go. Everyone else out there is better than me. And we do this, right, as animals, right? We create this like social hierarchy. We kind of there's this one up, one down position. And it's also okay, right? Like, we're biologically wired to do this, but it's just this realization, this insight where it's okay, because we're all in the same boat here together. We're all
right.
Yeah. And that's why you get to give yourself, can you talk about, like, I think a lot of this audience, including myself, as I've, recovering people pleaser over here, all recovering people pleasers, please stand up. Is realizing that, like, it's like there's a permission that we need from somebody, whether it's like, often my clients are thinking, oh, I need permission from somebody to be able to be myself, or to express and feel safe to be who I am. Troy, I'm really curious, in your own words, what do you feel like is missing for these individuals so that they can start to feel safe, and it's okay to say, hey, I don't feel good about this, or able to say no? you know, and this doesn't, I don't want to do this or like this.
So the work that I do around that involves what I call the shadows of shame. And they're basically archetypes of the voices in our heads. And I use it's been really helpful for me as I learned about this concept and then kind of expanded a little bit. But there's probably 3 of the shadows that are contributing to that for someone who's struggling with that. The first is the judge. And the judge is the voice that tells you you're not enough, you're not perfect enough, you're not trying hard enough, you need to try harder, here's where you're supposed to be, and you're not there yet. And so until you get there, and that's the perfection voice, like it's demanding perfection. And then there's an impotent one who says, no matter what you do, no matter how hard you try, it's never going to get any better. You just need to give up and just realize that you just are always going to suck. And then there's the third, which is the martyr. And the martyr tells you that your needs don't matter and that everybody else's needs matter more than yours. And the only way that maybe you can feel somewhat better about yourself is make sure that you don't have any boundaries and you tell everybody yes, or you never say no. And then maybe you'll feel better about yourself. So those 3 shadows are all shame-based. And all 3 of them, the underlying message is that you're not worthy of love and belonging, and there's something seriously wrong with you. So what I do with those is I in my mind, I have an idea of what each of those look like. And there's 6 of them, but we're only talking about 3 right now. I have an idea of what they look like. And then I actually move them out of my head and imagine that they're sitting across the room from me. Mm-hmm. And part of the reason why I do that is it takes the message out of me, which is where shame usually is stuck, right? An easy way to do that is to get a journal and just write down in second person what they say, like you're taking dictation. That's another way of getting that out of you. And then when you're sitting across from me, you're like, okay, wait, that isn't me. So if the martyr isn't me and the judge isn't me and the impotent one isn't me, then who am I? And if we really sit with that for a minute, we come to the really beautiful truth that I'm enough. I'm enough the way I am. I have what it takes, and those core beliefs that are really down there that when we're having a good day are active, right? And then I'm able to take a look at those shadows and I see what you're doing. You're actually trying to protect me. You're trying to protect me from being abandoned, trying to protect me from being rejected, all those attachment wounds. But if I listen to you, if I let you hijack my life, it's going to be ruined. So thank you. Y'all can go eat dinner somewhere. I'm going to do what's right for me. And that enables us to have the power to then say, I'm sorry, that just doesn't work for me. I can't do that. Hey, and you can use your boundaries and you can step into that. And you do that from this inner place of worth and truth, because you've cleared out those shadows that have been hijacking you, saying, don't do it. They'll be mad at you. They're going to be freaking out. I got it. Thank you. I got
yes. What I'm hearing is kind of like a parts work.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And I think even in one of your videos, you mentioned Gestalt share therapy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Put it in the chair, have a conversation with the shadow. Yeah.
Exactly. And this is something this audience can start to take away. And I do parts work as well, as Troy is over there doing parts work and teaching parts work, is instead of going to that person, a large part of this audience or everybody here watching thinks that they have to go to that person to resolve the situation. My husband's the problem, or my wife's the problem, or my kids are the problem, or my sister's the problem. And it's I have to go to them to get this unconscious turmoil resolved. Right? When actually you were going to say something, Troy?
Well, yeah, that doesn't usually work out that well, but
exactly. But there's an underlying belief, because the body makes an association, the unconscious makes an association. Oh, when I make that person feel bad, I feel better. Mm-hmm. When I make them wrong, I feel better. And even though this might be the case, you may feel, I wouldn't necessarily say better, you might feel different when you try to make someone else wrong for themselves. But actually what I'm hearing is you're able to resolve this on your own without that other person.
Right. Which is a beautiful thing. Especially like if this person has passed away or whatever, like, what do you do? It, to me, is a beautiful when I'm able to stand in my truth, and then I'm actually able to have a different conversation with that person. And in that place, I can own my stuff without me feeling shame. And I can also talk about the pain in a way that's not blamey, and just say, hey, like, let me show you my owie. I want to show you my owie. And they may or may not have the ability to have empathy for that, but it's a far different conversation than, look what you did, like you did this to me. It's almost this passive aggressive way. We are so timid sometimes and afraid to stand up for ourselves that then we go to the opposite and become very aggressive. So, but when we stand in our truth, we're able to do that in a loving way and hold space for them too, because we realize they matter just like we do.
Yeah. And that's what I know for my own personal self was an issue, is like, we make everything about us. We make someone else's behavior about us. What the words and the utterance of the other person is about us.
Right.
And it is coming from a very, I don't know what a better word for this, but it is emotionally immature, right? It is a bit more narcissistic, not to say that we're all narcissists here, right? But when we can start to emotionally mature and dissociate and realize, oh, well, my behaviors are about me. What I think is about me, how I'm internalizing this is based on the wound, right?
Yeah, and that's exactly what shame does. Like, shame makes it all about you, and it prevents you from being able to have empathy for the other person. So if we can recognize that shame it's not you that's causing this, it's shame. And if I can deal with the shame and develop some shame resiliency, I can then like take that egocentrism away, and I can actually hold space for me and the other person.
Yeah. Can you touch a little briefly on this syndrome, this martyrdom syndrome? I'm really curious about this one, because I know a lot of people pleasers, they play the sacrificial role. Air quotes around sacrificial role, but in their mind, they haven't had that insight yet. There's not that awareness. It hasn't come online yet, right? Like, oh, this is serving a purpose for me. Right.
Right. So the martyr shadow, who the biggest intent of the martyr is that it wants you to be seen by others and have them feel sorry for you. So it gets you to like say things that like in a very dramatic way, so do you notice what I'm doing? But if you were actually to have a conversation with the martyr for a second and say, hey, like, what are you doing? Like, what is this all about? The martyr will probably say, well, I'm really afraid of you being rejected again. I'm really afraid of you being abandoned again. I'm trying to prevent you from experiencing that pain. So if we can just get people to feel sorry for you, or if we can just get people to like notice how many plates you got in the air, like, then maybe they'll accept you. Maybe they will be there with you. And then if you're listening to that, you're like, that's ridiculous. Like, thank you, but that's really ridiculous. And I'm able to then distance myself and say, wow, if I listen to you, man, nobody's going to want to hang out with me. Like, nobody wants to hang out with a pity party person, or, like, look at all. And it actually is having the opposite effect of what the martyr's trying to cause. Like, people actually are pulling away from me instead of coming closer. So I'm able to kind of figure that out. And then I'm like, well, so what would be more healthy here? What would be more appropriate? How can I, if I need some recognition, how can I get that in a healthy way and say, hey, these are some of the things I did. Can you give me some feedback on that? Was it what you were looking for? Did I miss something? Because I really wanted to make sure that and having that in a healthy way versus like the martyry way, where we like, flog ourselves on all that stuff. So being able to recognize, number one, the martyr the martyr is your behavior based on that shadow. And if I can really distance myself from that, it gives me a breath. And then I'm like, what would be more healthy? What is it that I really, really want right now? And it's usually, I just want to be loved, accepted, validated, appreciated for the work that I do. Well, how can I get that met in a healthier way?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I also want to point out here, I think it's important to be able to give that to yourself.
Right.
First, before you can expect it from others.
Right. If shame hijacks your ability to even let yourself believe it, no matter what anybody else does, you'll deflect it. And after a while, they'll get tired of trying to give it to you, because it's like, I'm trying to give you love and you just keep throwing it on the floor. So yeah. There's a lot of work that has to be done about being able to love ourselves. And that's a tough one. But when we can even open that a little bit, it does create a place where that can grow.
Yeah. And I also want to really highlight what you just said about being open to it. Because I think there's, for a lot of people, there's a fear of being open to it, right? Because maybe there's a fear of really true intimacy, or there's a fear of being seen for who we are. And maybe we're gonna lose the connection or something like that. But and I've noticed that with clients that come in here, is the ones that struggle are the ones that really have not made that decision to really like to be different in some way. And they may not know what's right. But first really recognizing this is not working. Right. And I'm sure you get similar clients and patients, right, who come in and there's this internal battle, and I'm not getting what I need, but there also hasn't been a decision made other than like the same old habit that keeps repeating itself. So like you said, just being open, because at this point, like, what's the cost of this continuing?
Yeah, it's a tool that I often use. Like, what will happen if I am not willing to be open? What will the trajectory of my life end up being? And what would happen if I am? And I have them journal a little bit about both paths. And what would your life be like if you, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, if this is the continued path you choose to stay on, versus what would it be like if you switched?
I love it. And I know, Troy, you help people get to this place of inner love, acceptance, and this word I keep hearing from you, which is peace, which I think ultimately all of us are looking for, right? Is to have those connections, but also connections that support us being able to be at peace at the same time. So Troy, I know you have a free offering, a free gift for this audience called the 5-Day Challenge to Find Peace. Can you talk a little bit about that, and where people can go if they want to learn from you, if they want to work with you, or they want this free gift?
Sure. So the Finding Peace 5-Day Challenge is a series of 5 short emails that you'll get, one every day. There's a little video that's usually 3 or 4 minutes long that teaches a concept from the Finding Peace model and gives you a little brief, like something to journal or think about for that day. And over the course of 5 days, hopefully you will have connected with a stronger sense of peace with yourself. That's the feedback that I've gotten from many of the people who've taken the challenge, is that by the end, they do feel more peaceful. And I use the word peace because there's so many different words that are connected to it: that serenity, calm, love, connection. There's so many different words that can be interpreted with that. But that's, for me, always what I'm looking for. I could always use a little bit more peace in my life. So that's what the 5-Day Challenge is all about, is giving you a path to find that. And you can find that at troylove.com.
Perfect. Yeah. And we'll also put a link below this video as well, so you can access that. Troy, thank you so much for sharing your insights here on this interview series. I know if one person takes something away from this, like, we have done our job, right? I think go check out Troy's work. He really gets into the nitty gritty about these wounds. If you feel like there's fears of abandonment coming up, you feel like you're being neglected. Betrayal is a word I hear often with recovering people pleasers. Because ultimately we're betraying ourselves, right? And we mirror that out and project that out to the world. So Troy, thank you so much for your insights. I know this is going to be helpful to our audience, and we'll put the link below to go get that free gift. Go get it. Don't wait. This won't be up for long. So take advantage of this. So thank you, Troy, again for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. And bless all those who are here today. And hopefully they will be able to find the piece they're looking for. That's our hope. So thank you.